there's something called inherited post-traumatic stress. I mean, when you have 250 years of gender-based violence, and when your humanity has been so extinguished as to be, you know, you're not even a person, you're a thing, and there's not even a concept of you can be violated within the ruling culture and the legal system. Well, there's no textbook on how do you get over that. And then there's a lot of textbooks on how do you internalize it. Think of what the Jews are doing to the Palestinians, and you think, right, you know, the pupils outshining the master. And there's many, many historical examples of that. You can analyze a lot of what's happening in Israel today. Simply people who have not treated the inherited post-traumatic stress, and so instead they're acting out. There's a very simple approach to that. I'm not going to get into the politics. But what does that mean for us in the Western Cape? We've been slaves longer than we've been free. And for most of those years when we were technically free, we had colonialism, we had genocide, we had segregation, we had apartheid. We did not sit around and sit in counseling. And I think when you work with gender-based violence today and you ignore that history of being things, then there's a lot you don't understand. So how does inherited post-traumatic stress work? Well, your parents have gone through an extremely traumatic experience. They've been sold, their children have been sold away from them, they've been taken away from the people they love and put onto stud farms in order to make more children for the master. You know, there's that history. They've been rented out, they've been hired out, they've been, slaves could not wear shoes. This is how in the Western Cape, if you know the difference between slave and free, the slaves were the ones who walked barefoot. And I'll explain why it's important to me in a minute. But, so you go through this stress and you don't have treatment. So you begin to act in very predictable ways. It can be called red trauma syndrome, it can be called post-traumatic stress. But your children grow up thinking it's normal, because they're only children. They, you know, what adults do is what is normal. And so they begin to act like post-traumatic stress people, even though they themselves may not have been subject to the original trauma. Now, nobody's ever studied what does that mean over 250 years. What does it mean? Does it become a culture? Does it become an approach? But I'm asking you to think about why formerly enslaved people tend to be very patriarchal in some ways, why they tend to resolve conflict through violence, and why the notion of relating to each other as people becomes such a difficult one for us children of slaves. Okay, so I'm not going to go into a long thing about Islam because this is your history, but of course, as you know, my indigenous religion and language and culture was suppressed for all those centuries, and so for a lot of us, the path to independence from Christianity was through either marrying or converting to Islam. And this is probably a good time to say thank you for keeping a light shining all these centuries, because when you look at spaces of resistance and spaces of hope, it was Islam. So I want to give you this hope, because look, I wear shoes. And it took us 350 years to get to these sandals. So the fight that you're fighting today is hard and it's difficult, and we all have comrades who have fallen by the wayside whom we mourn. And we often don't think that we're going to make it. But heck, if we could come from being things to wearing sandals, then just think in a generation or two how different things can be. So that's all I want to say is, you don't know where you're going until you know where you came from, and if you think where you came from on that slave ship in 1657, we've really come far. So thank you, that was a beautiful toy, and we must do that often.